it is forbidden to disassemble privately to avoid electrical failure. Okay. There we go. Wow. All right. So that is quite the VRM layout. This is the NVIDIA solution. Maybe Intel soon enough. I've leaked something. Hey everyone, we have a teardown of a 5090 laptop today. It's kind of a different one for us because we're not really technically a part of this launch. We didn't talk to NVIDIA for this launch cycle, but we're part of it, and I'll tell you how we manage that in a minute. So this is an XMG laptop. I had exactly 6.5 hours to test this. We're helping Josh from Just Josh do a bunch of testing for their channel, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. So I only really got the overnight shift to work on this, and this is a pretty interesting one. So XMG has it's kind of gimmicky, honestly, and also broken, but it's got 2 ports here plumbed for a water cooling external accessory, which is this. So this is I think a 120, this is about a 120 size. We're gonna open it up and see. So this looks like a 120 rad with a 120 mil fan on it. And then we put some water in it, hooked it up with these tubes, and it doesn't work. But we're gonna show you everything anyway. It's interesting. We brought you this video. Visit store.gamersnexus.net to grab one of our highly heat-resistant silicone soldering mats for projects, model building, and crafts. You might also like our tabletop gaming dice, which come in a variation featuring Snowflake the cat and another featuring e-waste copper coil inductors embedded within the dice. Our honeypot t-shirts are also in production now, but still available on the website if you'd like to get a pre-order in for it. For the next week or so, we'll also be donating 10% of all store sales to the Cramden Institute local to us, which is a nonprofit that refurbishes savable electronics and systems and recycles parts that can't be reused. We'll be hosting a meet and greet and PC refurbishing meetup on April 5th at their Durham, North Carolina office that you can sign up for in our next hardware news episode as well. Head over to the store and grab some of our tools and support our work directly. So I just got done with the sort of overnight shift running thermals, acoustics, 1 game test. That's all I had time for, and some other stuff on this. And I will just really quickly say, even though we're not laptop reviewers, from what I'm seeing of a 5090 versus a 4090 in a laptop, not impressed thus far. But Josh from Just Josh will have more detail on that. So we flew them out to sort of help them learn more about some of the testing processes we use, help them get more established in what they're doing, teach them a bunch of tools and methodology things like that. Basically trying to share some of the experience we have because like Jay recently, they asked for some help with some testing, and so that's why we brought them out. And he brought with him this laptop and a 4090 one, a bunch of other ones, and there'll be some links down below to their channel if you want to see more on that. But we're gonna do the teardown today. First of all, this is hugely blocked off. So they've got really low porosity. I mean, this is just coming from the desktop world and looking at notebooks is always interesting for me because there's so many things that frustrate me. But this is, they've just got a lot of material, not a lot of hole here. So it looks like it's gonna be 2 squirrel cage blower fans on the bottom. There's some ventilation up top here. Most of the ventilation is at the back here. The good thing is this is relatively large. They're using almost the whole height of the chassis for it. And additionally, there's not a lot of obstruction here, so it's pretty much just an open hole from the fin stack, which you can see in there, a structural support there. That's about it. Some laptops, like one of our Strix Scar ones we use for editing mobily, have this whole area punched out as well for ventilation, which normally works great. It just moves all the I/O to the sides of the laptop, so there's some trade-offs there. And I guess getting into this, just to make it really clear, we are not really laptop reviewers. I mean, we're fully capable. It's all the same types of parts, but it's not something we do regularly, and we don't intend to. I'm just taking the opportunity to look at this weird one because it landed in front of me for all this other stuff. So take it for something fun to look at, not something that we're planning to do a whole lot of. But because this is the 50 series launch, we get all of the memes of NVIDIA and all of the same problems. Thermally, though, I am really curious to see how this is handling because in software readings, the GPU is measuring 175 watts for this. So compared to desktop, that's nothing. It's like 400 watts lower than a desktop actual 5090. But one of the other things I noticed, not being officially briefed by NVIDIA or anything, but saw that the CUDA core count is basically a 5080 desktop, not quite, a little bit of difference there, but it looks like they're at, I think it's 41 TPCs instead of 85. And so it's a huge difference from an actual 5090. One of the things I want to do, again, I wasn't briefed or part of the briefings because we don't do laptops, so I get to discover this with you all in sort of a natural way. I want to rip this off and look at the GPU silicon and see if it's actually just a 5080 die, or at least the die size as a 5080. And that's typically what they do, is kind of kick it down a bin and then rename it to the higher one on laptops. Now, it does have more memory than a 5080 desktop card. I think it's 24 to 16 gigabytes on the 5080 desktop, so they've at least bumped it up there. But let's get started with the disassembly. This is the Neo 16. This has a 275HX is the CPU from Intel. And then it's got the 5090 laptop version, which again is very different from the actual desktop 5090. So it is in name only. They're really nothing alike. Actually, a screw at an angle. Is this what we're doing now? Is this Ethernet today on laptops? Just checking for hidden screws. Nope, okay. Need a tool. Do you want to do some equipment loadout sounds?
I am the sound effect.
All right. So some tools in case it doesn't go well, and then some to hopefully just make it easy. Nice. All right, so it is using plastic clips. So 2 larger ones in the middle. Okay, now we get to the fun part. Just gonna make, that is not mine, just to be clear. The color and the length are both wrong. So that is either a factory hair, in which case, thank you, XMG. Or it is maybe a cat hair from Josh's team or something. All right, so we've got 2 larger blower fans here. So the way this is situated is they're pulling in air right here. And if you think of like a Steam Deck, normally what companies with a small volume are trying to do internally for cooling is they pull air in, and then anywhere it's not directly forced through, all the extra air that kind of spews out. So there's actually a hole here cut into the side of this shroud for the blower fan. That's going to let some air come out the side here, which normally is intentional. So on the Steam Deck, as an example, it allowed air to flow over some of the smaller components around the board and get some air over things like SSDs and memory and whatever. So other than that, once the air goes in, it's mostly going straight out the back here through these fin stacks. Really fat heat pipe right in the middle. I'm going to measure that. It looks like a 10 or a 12 or something, but it's a flat one. Round heat pipes typically perform a little better. Flat heat pipes are very situational, and so you can't really just trade one or the other. It's normally got to be sort of purpose fit. But that's kind of interesting, this massive heat pipe. Hopefully this is going straight across the die somewhere, because if it's not, they're missing out on performance. And let's just go ahead and start looking for, oh, there's a third blower fan here too. That's interesting. So that is kind of actually nice to see. So that's pulling in air here. Again, unfortunately, I would take a Dremel to this backside of this, but it's not mine, so I'm not going to do that. Josh will show up in an hour or so and look at it and say, what the fuck? And I'll say, surprise, I fixed it. Let's take this out. Okay, so that's done. There's a...
Your favorite connector.
Yeah, one of the favorite types. So that fan is an in fan. One of the many meanings of in is eagle. So I don't know if that's what they're using, but we're going to go with it. This is a model... Well, it's really long. You can freeze the frame and look at it if you ever need to replace this fan. That's the model. It is a 5 volt, 0.5 amp fan. This is good. So they're labeling 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8. I don't know if it's meant to be in order. Nice. Spring retained screw. So that looks like it's going to part of the actual heatsink to the silicon. Where's 4? We're gonna move on without 4. So far these are all the same type of screw, which is also good. So one of the things I really want to look at here is this water cooling solution where when presumably they have one that actually works for customers. When Josh and team initially hooked it up, so this is, we'll come back to all this, but this is just secured by magnets, which I'm not a big fan of because not only do we not know how magnets work, also it leaked. And beyond that, the trade-off for going with any kind of water cooling support in a laptop where it's not always connected is where they hook up here, so that goes in right there. When these, whatever pipes it's hooking up to, when there's no water, they're just empty. They don't really do a whole lot. So a heat pipe like this would be more effective than an empty water cooling pipe, even if it's made out of copper, and I don't know that it is, but we'll see soon. We're going to disconnect this water cooling. I look forward to not remembering what that means later. So just before we start actually poking out the board, we're going to disconnect the battery just so it's not live anymore. Okay, so some tape, got more adhesive. Just a piece of clear tape holding down the fan cable. And then there's this Mylar up here. So that's connected to that. That says SSD. Thinking that's self-explanatory. Interesting. All right, so they've got the pad pre-applied. No SSD in this slot, obviously. I think we're gonna go with disconnecting the tape from the fan rather than the other way around. Okay, look at how much more careful I am with it when it's not mine. Some more pre-installed hair, that's good. So this is gonna come out, this is another SSD cover. So 9100 Pro. Really just want this to come out. So we're gonna have to, this is all connected, so that's gotta come out too. There you go, it's just labeled 9. That's a new one. Those are the same, so maybe the non-lettered screws are the same. Is that gonna come up with it? Thinking this might come out. That's gonna have to get disconnected, so we'll do that. Maybe we just take the board out. This probably has to come out too. It's a SK Hynix, and this is 6400 CL52. Oof, 16 gigabyte per stick. We'd probably leave those in there. Oh, all right. Okay, so this is part of one of the VRM cooling solutions, if you call it that. But this was the one that was connected to that smaller blower fan right here. So it's gonna be a little bit of cooling under and over this. It's just a flat plate. There's not a lot of surface area. It shouldn't need a lot. It's just connecting to a couple inductors and MOSFETs right here. So you see power stage, power stage, power stage. And then the probably hotter of the things, well, MOSFETs and inductors can run pretty hot, but the chipset's here as well. There is an impression mark on every one of these, so they are making contact. That pad is contacting the back of the memory, which would help. That definitely does something. I mean, PCB is just copper and fiberglass, so that's good. This one apparently does not get any treatment whatsoever. So just get the SSD out. So I'm gonna go ahead and assume the PCB for the motherboard has to come out. So I'm gonna start doing that. Thanks. Hidden under the cable. Wow, all right. Battery is 6450 milliamp hour, typical 6300 rated, 15.48 volts, 99.9 watt hours, rated 97.6. Charge voltage, limited charge voltage, 17.8. Well, this was an ambitious project. There we go. Okay, wow. Well, that explains why it was so stuck. Wow. All right. Cool. Ooh, and there's another pre-installed hair. So that was an experience. I don't think half of those steps were necessary. So this was really suctioned on there, and it's because they're using thermal putty. Thermal putty is good. It is highly deformable. It has a lot of the characteristics of a pad, and it's kind of a mid-step in terms of viscosity between a pad and a paste. You think of it that way. So it's a good gap filler. So that is quite the VRM layout. All of the heat's highly concentrated, dead center there. And they've got the fans flanking. For the cooling solution, large copper cold plate here. Unsurprisingly, not a vapor chamber, but you wouldn't expect it to be. And then the water is entering here, and it's really not that big of a channel for it to go into. If this were mine, maybe I'll talk to XMG or something, but I kind of want to cut this in half. If they're just running water through this flat plate, that would be awesome. That would be like super effective when it's connected. It'd have a tiny gap they'd want to minimize, which it looks like they've done. This thing's only like less than a millimeter, maybe a millimeter max thickness at the bottom there. Not this whole thing, but at the bottom where it connects to the top copper. So anyway, let's take a look at some of the details. I need calipers. So are they doing a copper fin stack? That would be kind of nice. That is. Or if it's like the ones I've, so that's a copper fin stack that they've just powdered or sprayed to turn black in a few places, but where it's exposed externally, although I think the copper looks nice. And then, so it's 13.6 is what that says. So I don't know if that means it's a 10 that was flattened or if they're calling it a 12. Like I said, this is kind of an abnormal way for us to be involved in a product cycle. It's just a fun teardown for me, but. So pretty large heat pipe, 13.6 millimeters where we measured it. That's going to be a standard 6 mil, this one. Yeah, so this larger heat pipe is going straight across the center of, which component is that? The GPU. It's also cutting across most of this piece of silicon here. So let's just clean these off, get an idea what everything is. So this is a phase change pad that they had on there. You can see the tiles, that's always cool. I like that. So the dices in that silicon where it's one piece and then another, that's an Intel tile for some of the IP for the CPU. So each of those pieces is manufactured separately and then glued together, ironically, because Intel knocked AMD for glued CPUs years ago, but here we are. This is the NVIDIA solution. Maybe Intel soon enough. I've leaked something, and this is the laptop 5090 as they call it. Let's just get a die measurement. 25.4 by 16. What's that for area? Let's see. Actual 5080 is 378 millimeters squared. This I've got at 406 from an external measurement. That's like close enough that I'd have to maybe go do the same type measurement for a 5080. But in either case, this is nowhere close to a 5090 die, like a true 5090. Let me pull that up. 5090 die size is 750 millimeters squared, gargantuan by comparison. This, by external measurement, roughly 406. Let's just do one more just to see if I get any closer to that 5080 desktop. So that's like 15.8. So that is, I mean, that might bring it in line. 15.8 by 25. Oh, that's a little. 25.5. Let's try that. Yeah, so 403. Very close. Close enough that we'd have to take the measurement the same way on a 5080 desktop. So for other stuff going on the board here, the memory modules for the video card, we've got 2 over on this side, another 4, and then 2 more. So we're up to 8 total on this side. This is a 24 gigabyte GPU as accompanied with the memory. So I need to check maybe if there's some on the other side. It is forbidden to disassemble privately to avoid electrical failure. Okay. I'm not privately disassembling it. I am publicly disassembling it. So this is like this is really interesting. This is like a bridge for so they've split the motherboard. Guessing this is a very specific torque spec based on the markings here. What? I was expecting like 1,000,000 pins. What the hell is that? So, Unimicron Neoconics. Motherboard, that way, GPU, it's like a junction. So, I mean, it's a PCB. I'm guessing the sensitive area is underneath it. I don't know if it's going to be like solder balls or what. That I really don't actually want to take off, but it would come up easily. I'm thinking that is incredibly fragile underneath there from what I'm feeling. I personally really don't want to take this off, but this is literally what we exist for, is to do stuff people don't want to do on their own. So. Maybe not as fragile as I thought. All right, well, so definitely this is very directional. So that has to go back the same way. So bunch of are these pins? Those are technically, I think those are really tiny LGA pins. So those look like tiny land grid array. And then it's contacting pads on the 2 boards. That's kind of cool, interesting. So going for a high-speed link here, that's why they're doing this, and they're avoiding cables. They're bridging 2 boards, which I guess has a lot of benefits. One, maybe for structural or flex reasons, but another one would be it would allow them to manufacture do the SMT process separately. So maybe there's benefits to having smaller devices you're doing SMT to, or separate lines for GPU and CPU, whatever it may be. So that's kind of a, whatever the reason is, interesting solution. And I guess we will finish what we opened it up for, which is checking if there's memory on the underside or if it's just higher density on the top side. And so that's all that's going on under there. Just isolation. For the rest of this, I'm not going to disassemble this further because all I was interested in was the cooling solution and the silicon, especially the die size. For the rest, I guess it looks like they've got a couple different boards spread out. So that's the GPU board we just removed. This is connected over to the side for side I/O. There's memory accesses right here in the center. So you saw how we took that out if you ever wanted to upgrade memory. So last thing we're going to take apart is the water cooling solution. And I'm just going to see what they've got in there for radiator, and that's kind of it. Let's not drag the cables across where all the screws are tracked. that would be suboptimal. So we've got, those are Allen keys. Let me grab some of those. So we got 4 in the corners here. It looks like there's a spot right there that I'm going to use to pry it open in a minute. Yeah, so the deal with this was when Josh's team connected it, they called me over because they're like, it's leaking, and it was. And that is just because so I really want to see them use a clip for this, because you can see, I think it's an agnostic tube. I mean, I didn't get the marketing materials for this, but appears to be agnostic in that, like, the magnet's it's not set up where it rejects the connection, you know, in one order or the other, so they can go in both ways. And I think it's just a pass through one side to the other. It's that simple. On the laptop side, though, so they sent us 2 sets of these cables. Both of them have clips on this side, or I shouldn't say cables, tubes. And those clips connect to the laptop and secure it. I think they really need to do that on the actual thing, the box that contains the radiator. There's just no reason to go with only a magnet to this. I mean, because like once you're clipping it in somewhere, it's no longer a quick disconnect thing. And it should not be a quick disconnect thing unless it's a proper QDC for water cooling. So just using a magnet on something with water in it, I mean, this connection is so bad if you take a look at this, because what happens is, like, it really needs to sit like this, but it doesn't. It sits like that. And so that's not great. That's how they got the leak. The one thing I will say is good, and I don't know if this was intentional, but XMG at least put the power cable above the tubes, not below them. So when it leaks, it will not leak onto the power cable, probably. So that much was good. All right, so this is really heavily obstructed, so not a lot of hole. Porosity is pretty low. That covers a 120 mil fan right there, and then that's got a 120 mil radiator back there, and it's just blowing through out this side, so it's a straight in and out. The pump's pretty loud, so it does run. It just doesn't. It basically turns off immediately, and we didn't troubleshoot it. I mean, the XMG told Josh's team it's just defective. So that's the res. The radiator's next to it. Pump's over here, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a 120 CLC. You know, normally you look at something like this for a desktop PC, and it's like, this is not going to cut it for anything. But then you compare the extra surface area in a 120 dedicated CLC to the surface area of cooling in a laptop, and it's a massive increase as long as they're plumbing it in a way that's effective, which we unfortunately could not test without it functioning. So, yeah, I guess we'll more or less leave that there. So anyway, we've got thermal data. I don't know when I'm uploading it, where I'm putting it, because I ran all this stuff overnight. It's like, let me just get this before we take it apart, just before we tamper with the thermal interfaces and all that stuff. So we have that data. It's either up or it will be up very soon. Kind of fun. Well, really fun for me, because we don't normally work on this stuff. And it was nice to just, okay, let me just apply, like, throw everything that we've got at it from all our processes for desktop, and just see what we can knock out in like the 6 or so hours that we had access to it while supporting Josh's team. So check out their channel for some of the videos with them, and we'll link that below. And otherwise, I don't know, maybe I'll do something with this, with the water cooling stuff. I might buy one or something. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to support us directly, or patreon.com/gamersnexus to throw us a few bucks. And we use it for stuff like flying smaller creators out here to help them learn how to do some of the stuff that we do, and give them access to our sound chamber and all that other stuff in case they want to do some of the more unique testing that we get the fun of doing now. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.